Hi everyone, welcome back to Cute Nerdy DIY. Today I am finally doing another squishy makeover and I'm really excited to do this because it's been so long since I last did one. So the squishy that I'm making over today is this little like bumblebee type thing. I'm guessing it's a little person inside a bumblebee costume. It's really cute, but it's a bit kind of scratty, and as you can see, like there's a lot of misprints. So I thought I'd give it a makeover because I had something in mind I wanted to do. So for this squishy makeover, I haven't actually used any sandpaper, and I've also decided not to cut anything off because I wanted to see how well I could do without doing any of that. So for once I am actually using fabric paint, which is quite a big deal for me because I never normally use it because it's quite expensive in the UK if you want to get loads of colours. To start with, I'm doing a white layer like normal. Now, because I normally use a paintbrush when I use like acrylics and glue, I did start to do that with fabric paint and quickly realised that it really doesn't actually work very well for this. So I can understand why people like Mariah use a popsicle stick, because the effect that you get is just kind of, it's a bit messy and it doesn't really look very good. So I basically just painted a big layer of white on there, and I did actually notice that it takes a lot more layers of fabric paint than it does with the acrylic and glue mixture. So I think in the end it actually took probably about 5-6 layers just to cover everything up. But anyway, I popped it in a little tub to dry and put it next to the window or the radiator where it dries quicker. So once that had dried, I added another layer, and I think I probably added another few layers in the end just to try and cover it up as best as possible. By this point, I don't know if I was missing something, but I was really struggling to kind of get a really good coverage on the whole squishy. So I did actually go a little bit crazy and just kind of squirted all the fabric paint on just to try and cover it as much as possible. At this stage I was still using the brush. I don't know how good this kind of did. It made it look a bit messy and it didn't seem to kind of flatten out as much as the acrylics normally do. There are quite a lot of negatives and positives I found with both puffy paint and using acrylic, so I might do a video on what I've basically found to be the positives and negatives of both, because I genuinely think that they're both good and bad in their own ways, so it's kind of a personal preference thing as to which one you should choose. So I think that's going to be a video coming soon, just to kind of help everyone out to work out which is the best option for them, really. So 10 million years later, when the base had finally dried, I could start to mix my colours. So I took a yellow puffy paint and I took an orange, and I basically wanted a very kind of dark yellow colour. So I only added a tiny bit of orange in and then mixed that all together. So for the main bit here, I used a popsicle stick to kind of brush this all on. Once again, I noticed it wasn't really taking, which was a bit confusing, but like I said, I've never really used puffy paint that much, so I started to use the brush instead, and it seemed to go on a lot better than using the popsicle stick. Again, this took quite a few layers to do, If I was doing it again, I would actually mix the puffy paint with some PVA glue, because I found out that it doesn't actually ruin the kind of elasticity of the paint and it still works really well. It just means the paint goes on a little bit smoother than it does if you just use it on its own. So I needed to do the front once the back had dried, and as you can see, I don't know if you can tell yet what it is, but it's kind of taking shape and starting to look a bit more like the intended result. So after a few layers, I realised that that was probably the best I was going to get it to look. So the next stage was to paint the face on the front, and all I did there was mix together a kind of fleshy tone. So the next step, I took some light blue puffy paint for the t-shirt and some dark blue puffy paint for the shorts. For this, I just put it straight on rather than mixing it out first, and then I just used a really small brush just to kind of go over it. Now I needed to keep it quite thick because I didn't want to do too many layers, so that's why I kind of just squirted it all on straight away. Once that was done, I did the same with the shorts, and I just used the dark blue instead and just very carefully kind of painted around the legs and the rest of the body. So I noticed that the blues were a little bit too dark compared to what I did want them to be, but after that I added some little kind of backpack straps onto the arms, and next I took a Sharpie and a Posca pen and I started to draw on the little feet. Now my plan wasn't actually to use a Sharpie, I wanted some black puffy paint, but my local store, that is the only store in however many miles that sells fabric paint, had sold out of black. So I didn't really have another option, and in the end the Sharpie actually worked quite well. So for this stage my plan was to use the Posca paint, but I found out that mine had actually run out, so I tried just using the normal white fabric paint, and this worked just as well. So all I'm doing here is drawing on the whites for the eyes. Once that had dried, I then started to draw on the blacks of the eyes using the Sharpie. Now it's always really nerve-wracking using the Sharpie on a light colour, because if you make a mistake, then odds are you won't be able to make it better. So just take your time when doing this. I was very nervous and my hand was a little shaky, but I just did the best I could, and I think it actually turned out alright, so I'm quite happy with that. But all I'm doing here is just taking a really long time to just draw the little lines around the eyes. Now hopefully by now you might be able to guess what it is, but I'm still not going to say until the end just in case. Next I drew on his little nose, and then finally I drew on the face. So here's a little before shot, and here's the end result. hopefully, as you can tell now, it's Jake and Finn from Adventure Time. The mouth's a little bit wonky, but I was really happy with how it turned out. Now, I wanted to show it alongside all my other squishy makeovers because these are my favourite ones I've done, and I really enjoyed doing them again. So I added his little jowl on in the end, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. But thank you for watching. There will be more squishy makeovers coming really soon. I'm really glad to be back, and I will see you in the next video.